सत्यमेव जयते नानितं उत्तिष्ठं जाग्रतप्राप्यपरान्निभूतम्. Hello, good morning. It is 5:30 a.m. in the morning, and we are live here with you preach to you, and preach to you, teach to you with the real Sanatana Dharma. In this episode number 16, we will be share with you how the blisses and emotion exist as per the real Sanatana Dharma, the manuscript of century old manuscript and the masterpiece done by the researchers based on the real Sanatana Dharma. What is exactly available today and what was really available in the ancient time, and what are the changes has been done due to some special reason, so we will be preach that to you. In this episode number 16, we will be shared with you the blisses and the emotion, how it has been exist and how that impacted the life of human beings in the ancient era, and how today the people has been forgotten totally the real blisses and emotions based on the human social life as per the ancient rules and rituals. In this episode number 16, the version 6 of the portion 3rd of this ancient manuscript, we will be flaws with you the knowledge of actual blisses and emotions. We have seen that the Ishvara is thought, power, and bliss, and man as his child, as also these characteristics. When the Jivatma becomes wrapped in dense matter, the aspect of his nature, which is bliss, is ever going outwards in search of satisfaction, trying to realize itself by the uniting itself within the outer world. The impulses outwards are called desire, and when they unite the Jivatma to an object, that gives him pleasure. So that he desires to be again united to such an object, the resulting emotion is called love or liking. When, on the contrary, they unite the Jivatma to an object that gives him pain, so that he desires to avoid union with such an object again. The resulting emotion is called hate or dislikes. The first makes an attraction between the Jivatma and the object, the second makes a repulsion. The Jivatma thinks over these likes and dislikes and gradually trains himself to direct his emotion rightly. Emotion, thus guided by reason in accordance with the will of Ishvara, develop into virtues, and this the culture of the emotions. From the ethical development of man as he cultivates the emotion called the love, he unites himself to an ever widening circle of beings. The family, the community, the nation, the race, loving them as himself, and his love becomes a continually increasing expression of the bliss aspect of his nature, which finds satisfaction in union. We have seen that evolution is now leading us towards union, or in other words, that the will of Ishvara is guiding the separated soul towards the union with each other and with himself. In this union is bliss, therefore the right and the happy are inseparable. Over and over again, the Sanatana Dharma leads us to this one conclusion: Brahman is bliss. Therefore, the Jivatma, being of the nature of Brahman, is also bliss. The unhappiness only arises when he goes against evolution, against the great will, goes in our world wrong. ब्रह्मैवे वेदे सर्वे सच्चिदानन्दरूपं सच्चिदानन्दरूपरूपीमतं सर्वं. All this in is Brahman, Sajidananda, Sajidananda is this all. Parachikhani, Parachikhani Vrityavritta Swayambhuhu, Tassamati Varanam Paschatan, Paschayati Nanatratatam. The self-born pierced the descents outwards, therefore the Jiva looked outwards and not towards the inner self. Sada ve sukhan labhete yathai karoti na sukha labha karoti sukhameva labha karoti yomeva bhuma sutta sutta नालपि सुखमस्ति भुवैव सुखं यत्र नद्याति पश्यति नानि चित्रघोश्चित्रितै नन्यद्विजाति नाति सो भूमाश्रये अत्राशना पश्चयातनं नयाय च गस्तो गच्छानि दिव्यानाति दिजानाति तद्लब्धो यो विभुवा तदमृतमथ यदल तन्मयर्वम्या. When the jiva obtained the pleasure, then he engaged in action. Never doth the enter on action without having obtained the pleasure. Only when he had obtained pleasure doth the engage in action. That which in infinite, which is infinite, that is the true pleasure, happiness. There is no happiness in the finite. The infinite alone is happiness, where the self sees not another heart, not another note, not another than the self, that is the infinite, where the self sees here not another than the self, that is the finite, that which is infinite is immortal, and that which is finite is mortal. सुख है चैतन्य स्वरूप है परि मितानंद समुद्रश्च विशिष्ट सुख स्वरूप सुख पश्चानंद इति. Joy and consciousness are limitless ocean of joy than which there is no greater happiness. Such is Ananda. इष्ट विषय बुद्धि सुख बुद्धिर निष्ठति विश्यसे बुद्धि दुरितस्य दुःख न बुद्धि. The consciousness of pleasure is the consciousness of an object desired. The consciousness of pain is the consciousness of an object undesired. सर्वांगनि भूतानि सुखैरं मनते सर्वांगनि सुख दुःखस्य भृश्यत्रस्तते. All beings reveal in pleasure, all shrinks greatly from pain. इच्छा द्वेष समस्तते मुद्धेन द्वंद्व मोहेन भारत सर्वभूतानि समोह सर्वे यानिधि परम तनम परंततम. By the delusion of the pairs of opposite, O Bharata, sprung from attraction and repulsion, O slayer of foes, all beings walk this world a wholly deluded. इच्छद्वेषो सुख दुःख षड्घातं पश्यति तनां धृति एतत्पक्षेत समासेन सविकारं उद्धावितम्. Desire, aversion, pleasure, pain, and the compound organism intelligence, firmness, these briefly described, continued the field and its changes. Kama, Esha, Krodha, Esha, Rajoguna, Samundratto, Dava. It is Kama, desire, and it is Krodha, anger, arising out of Rajas. Indriya Sahi, Nindri Swarthe, Raga, Dvesha, Vaivasthito, Yar Yatorna Vashmachi Gachette Hasya Parisparintato. Affection and aversion for the object of sense abide in the senses, let none come under the domination. Dominion of these two, they are obstructor of the path. रागद्वेष विषयुक्तते विज्ञानी निंद्रिशनिश्चरण आत्मवैश्य विधेयात्मा प्रसादम Pradhasam daming gacchati. But the disciplined self moving among sense object with senses free from attraction and repulsion, mastered by the self, both to peace. यो शास्त्री विधि मृत्युंजयता वर्तते कामकारतम् नासो सिद्धिममापनोति न सुखो न परमं गतिम्. He who having cast aside the ordinance of the Shastra, followed the prompting of desire, attained not to perfection, nor happiness, nor the highest goal. एको वशे सर्वभूरान्तरम् एको वशे सर्वभूतात्तनातरम् एको रूपे बहुतैः तमः समस्तये मनुष्यते पश्यति धीरा तशेषा सुखे शाश्वतं नित्यैति श्यामम्. The one who controls all the inmost self of all beings, who make the many forms of one form, they who see that one is the self, only to those rules of intelligence belong to the eternal happiness, you none else. The verses 7 of this ancient manuscript says that self regarding is the virtues. The self-regarding is the virtues. We have seen that the Jivatma is related to all around him and that ethics is concerned with making his relation with others harmonious. But we must not forget that he is most closely related to his own koshas or bodies, the part of the not self that he has most closely united to himself, and that unless he is the harmonious relation with these, he can hardly hope to be in harmonious relation with the bodies that are further away from him. While he is young, these bodies of his master him and lead him into all sorts of trouble. As he grows older, he begins to try to master them, and many a hard fight he has with them before the develops the great virtue called self-control. The control of the lower self by the higher self of the bodies by the Jivatma, virtues that belong to those bodies considered by themselves rather than in connection with the relation between different jivatma are called self-regarding in modern classifications. But everyone can see that a person who has these virtues will promote harmonious relation with others much more than one who has them not. Manu, the great lawgiver, lays much stress on the necessity for this self-control and gives some most valuable advices about it. He says that action has three forces behind it and that each of these must be mastered. Action is born of mind, speech, and body. The mind, the monomoksha kosha, monomaya kosha, which includes the emotion, must be conquered. This is the hardest task of all, for the mind runs after the object of desire, swayed and controlled by the object of desire, swayed and controlled by the longing to possess the object which promises to give pleasure. The emotions are ever craving satisfaction, and the mind seeks to gratify them, becoming their slave. The Jivatma must free the mind from this slavery and subdue it for his own service, making it the master of the senses and the sense organs, as Manu says. In conquering this the mind, the two set of five become conquered. The two set of five are the 10 indriyas, that is the five janindriyas and the five karmendriyas. Let the pupil then aim at ruling his mind. It is runs to evil things that let him call it back. Let him allow to fix itself only on great things. This is the first, the most difficult, the most essential part of self control. The control of speech is the next step. We must think before we speak. Hastily, speech leads us into the endless trouble. Arjuna was often very hasty in his speech and so got himself very, into many difficulties as in his hasty vow to slay himself if he did not kill Jayadratha, the slayer of his son before sunset, thus necessitating the interference of Sri Krishna, shrouded the sun, who shrouded the sun prematurely to introduce Jayadratha to come out from his triba, provoked by Yudhishthira's taunting speech and on other occasions. Nay, his failure to keep a hasty vow led to his death on the great journey. Arjuna said he would consume all our foods in a single day. Proud was he is in his heroism. But he did not what he boasted, hence has he fallen down. He who has conquered his tongue is near to self mastery. Thirdly, the physical body must be controlled and not be allowed to hurry us into sin for its gratification, says Sri Krishna. Worship of the Devas, the twice born, the Gurus, and the wise purity, forwardness, chastity, and harmlessness are called the ancestry and austerity of the body. Youth is the time for conquering the body, for it is then most easily subdued and set in the right way. For the body is a creature of habit, and though at first it will oppose the will of the Jivatma, will with great energy. A little perseverance makes it give away, and then it goes as controlled and readily along the new road as it did along the old. Among the sources of evils and of sorrow that we should strive to get rid of by this self-control is self-desire, for out of the insatiable desire for material wealth and material pleasures grow many miseries, and peace arises from the absence of these desires and not by their continued gratification. Thus monkey found. For greedy and wealthy monkey had searches for it long, but ever he seemed doomed to disappointment. With the last remnant of his property devoured, he bought a pair of claves to train up for the plough, but fate ordained that the cord with which the two were tied should get entangled with a passing camel, so that both were killed. This last mischance opened the heart of monkey, so that desire fled thence unconfined, and monkey burst forth into song. He that desire happiness must renounce desire. Well did Shukha says that of these two, the one who gets all that he wishes, and the one who casts off every wish, the latter who renounces all is surely much superior to the former. The none can ever attain to the end of all desire. Do the whole my soul, so long as slave to greed, taste now for one the joy of freedom and tranquility. Long have I slept, but I shall sleep no longer, I shall wake no more, shalt thou deceive me, O desire. Whatever object thou didst fix any heart on, what didn't thou force me to follow? Heedless, heedless, never pausing to inquire if it were easy to impossible to gain. Though art without intelligence, though art a fool, ever unsatisfied, though burns like a fire, always lambent the more offerings. Though art impossible to fill, like pace itself, the one wish is to plunge me into sorrow. This day we part from the day, oh desire, I live no longer in thy company. I think no more of the train. I cast thee off with all the passion of my heart. I who was harassed by despair before have now attained the perfect peace of mind in full contentment of the heart, since at ease shall I live henceforth on what comes to me, and labor no more for the satisfaction of the wishes of my foes, casting off thee and on all they train. I gain at once instead tranquility and self-restraint, forgiveness and compassion and deliverance. Thus Manki lost a little and gained all here. Also the story of King Yayati. The king Yati, who, driven mad by wild desire, took from his own son his fair and splendid youth to strive to fill their with the ever grasping maw of desire in insatiable. For thus the story runs. King Yati, son of Nahusha of the lunar destiny of kings was overfond of the pleasure of sense and fell into sin, which brought upon him the wrath of his father-in-law, the great Rishi Shukra. The priest of the Titan king become because of that what King Yayati was suddenly struck with shriveled and tottering old age in the very midst of his glorious prime of manhood. He propitiated the Rishi, and Shukra, taking pity on him, decreed that he could exchange for 1,000 years his age and feebleness for the health and youth of any of his sons, who should consent willingly to the exchange. Yayati asked his five sons in succession, the fifth and the youngest, Pura, for love and reverence of his father, gave him his own youth and took from him his age for the period of 1,000 years. For that long period, King Yati assiduously pursued the pleasure of the senses, endeavoring to exhaust the luxuries of the world of matter, but ever he found that his craving grew even when his senses drilled with satisfaction. He belonged in vain that his longing for the world of sense should be exhausted by fulfillment. As one spoke of a wheel running after another spoke of it, the chase was endless at the last. As the 1,000 years approached their close, a great Vairagya arose in his mind, and he saw that desire ceased not with satisfaction but with frustration. He called Guru to him, took back his own old age with gladness, and gave to him his youth together with the kingdom, and retired into the forest, chanting the verse that summed up all his life experience. Desire may not be quenched by enjoyment of its objects. It is only increased manifolded or manifold therewith as fire with liberation of libation of butter. Let us pause and moment in the word harmlessness in the above quotations of Sri Krishna's word in the P115141. Harmlessness is the highest dharma. Bhishma taught we should injure nothing Our life should be a source of help, not of harm. The control of the body included this abstention from injuring others, as said Brihaspati, that man who practices the religion of universal compassion achieves the highest good. One should never do that together to another with one regard as injurious to one's own self. This is brief, is the rule of rightness. People often harm others in more thoughtlessness and so bring about much trouble. When Yudhishthira and Duryodhana and their brothers were boy and all lived and studied together, Bhishma, who was the strongest of them all, often indulged in practice jokes and rough horse playing, exercising his great strength with boyish thought. Lest lessons upon the younger and weaker boy. When a number of them climbed up into a tree to pluck the fruit, he would take the trunk and shake the tree till the little boy tumbled down like a ripe fruit. Bhishma thought it was great fun and laughed, but some of the boys were hurt in body, and what was worse, hurt in mind. Again, when they were out bathing and swimming in the river that flowed beneath the wall of Hastinapura, Bhima would swim underneath the other boys and catching hold of a number of them would dive into the water and hold them there till they were almost drowned, while his own greater lung capacity helped him efficiently against similar distress. He delighted in this, but the others were organized. But was the consequences a smoldering fire of revelation and dislike that later on grew into a blazing fire of hate that consumed Kauravas and Pandavas alike? The boys, the boys' thoughtlessness of Bhima was one of the chief cause of the Great War. It is true that unless the combustible combustible are there, the spark will not kind the fuel unless the tissues are tanned. The miracle, the microbe will not dwell the diseases. Still, it is our duty to guard against such a destructive spark, such a death-bringing microbe, as carefully as we can. Then thoughtless exercise of strength hurt the weak who cannot retaliate, then the anger that is born but is not vented becomes transformed into what is contemplatively called hate and malice, but it is in reality far less to blame than the careless spoliation of the weaker by the stronger to the superficial eyes of one who is himself equally inclined in his secret mind to oppression. Such act may appear blameless or even magnificent, but to the just eye of a true chivalry, they will always appear in their real character of meanness and tyranny. And he who studies the great history carefully knows well that the Pandavas were not all to praise, nor the Kauravas all to blame. The tribe control of mind, speech, and body result in a rightness, in a right character expressing itself in right conduct. The man who has thus put himself into the right relation with the things nearest to him, his own emotion, mind, and body, and has thus partially acquired the virtues classified as self regarding or egoistic in Western ethics books is also to practice more effectively those classified therein as altruistic, those which arises in relation to other living beings, We have now to study the virtues and vices which arises in the relation between human beings. These are best classified under these in the three heads: the virtue and vices which arises in the relation to superior, the virtues and vices which arises in relation with equal, and the virtues and vices which arises in relation to inferior. In this way, we should obtain a clear and simple classification of the virtues which make our relation with all around us harmonious, and seeing them distinctly, we can strive to attain them, and we shall also see plainly the vices which makes disharmony and can try to avoid them. All the virtues have their root in pure love and have bliss for their fruit. All the vices have their root in personal hate and their fruit is misery. शुभाशुभा फलैश्च कर्म मनोभो वाग्देहे संभवतम् कर्मजतागत्य नृतमुक्ता माधवना मध्यमा मानस मनैस वायु मृत्युफुल्लुते गते शुभाशुभं वाचा वाचकृते कर्म कायनेव तु कायमं कायकामे वाग्दर्ह्ययोरेप मनोदशारड कर्मदराड तस्तथैव च यस्तते निहिते बुधं त्रिकायधृते स अजय उच्यते निद्रायते त्रमयमुच्यते सर्वभूतेषु मानव कामक्रोधो समस्यते स्वयं मे तथा सिद्धिः निगच्छति. Karma that to bring the good or evil fruit arised in the mind or is speech or in the body, and they fold of the path of men according to their karma, high or low of middling. Thus Jiva reaped good or evil, mental with the mind, vocal with speech, and bodily even with the body, the danda of the speech, the danda of the mind, the danda of the act. He who has laid these rods of rule over his intelligence, he is the Tridandi. Having laid these rods of control over his mind with respect of all beings, and having conquered lust and anger, the jiva attained perfection. देवद्विज गुरुचा पूजनीयनट शौचञ्च सर्वजं ब्रह्मचर्य सहिता च शरीर तप उच्यते अनुं देवगृहे कर्मं वाक्ये तपस प्रियहित जयते स्वभाव यायाय भयसने चैवे वासन्धमये ततो उच्यते मन प्रसाद सौम्य भावते मौनमात्मा विनिप्रह भाव सदृशिशुद्धिरित्यते तपो च मानसमुच्यते. Worship given to the devas, to the twice born, to the teachers, and to the wise. Purities, straightforwardness, continuous, and continence, and harmlessness are called the austerity of the body. Speech causing no annoying, truthful, and beneficial, the practice of the study of the scripture and called the austerity of speech. Mental happiness, equilibrium, silence, self-control, purity, and nature, this is called the austerity of mind. न जातु काम कामानामापुते भूमेन शाम्यस्ति हविष्यकृगाने वर्तते भूय एषा विद्यते धर्मते. Not by the enjoyment of the object of desire, doth desire abate, rather it increased again as fire with libation of butter. असह्य महाबाह्यो मनो दुर्नीति ग्रह चलतम अभ्यासेन तुम कथय वैराग्येण च गृह्यते यतो यतो निश्चरयति मनश्चित्ते शबलहम स्थिरम तत्समस्ततो निमय वेदता तदा तमसते वशानायेतु. Without doubt, O mighty armed, the mind is hard to curb and restlessness. But, O son of Kunti, it may be troubled by consistent practices and constant practices by dispassion. As often as the wavering and unsteady mind goeth For so often reigning it is let with bring it under the control of the self. अभ्यासते पश्यतापि समर्थते कर्मतः परमे भव मद्यर्पति कर्म चाकुर्वन् सिद्धिमानो विस्तति स. If also thou art not equal to constant practice by intent on my services, performing action for my sake, thou shalt attain perfection. नित्यो नित्यानां चेतनश्रेष्ठतनाम एको बहुना यो विदधाति कामान् तमासमस्तते ये मनुष्यते पश्यते निधीरा तसेषा शान्ति सर्वस्ति नेत्रेपां नेत्रेषाम्. That which is the eternal of all eternals, that which is the life of all lives, that which beings one inspires many with desire the wise, that behold that one seated within themselves, to them alone belong the lasting peace, unto none else. गोत्रज सहसुजो नृत्यते सो नीतिरस्ततु धनलोभो दुर्विधायां वृद्धतुष्य लघु पुष्यते वर्तते जगद धीरनश्च पितृमित्रतो प्रवते. The kinsman is the congenial foe, such is the view of those whose minds are blinded by the greed of wealth. To him whose wealth is wisdom, the world that is filled with his elders, equals, and youngers is as a world of parents, friends, and children. अविजयते आत्मनां नमामात्सनन्न विजिगीषते अमेनात्मा विज्यते मात्या स्वयशवशं परिह्रियते आत्मना न वयमेव प्रथमं द्वेषरूपेण युज्यते तसो यज्वताय न मे मत्सृत न मोघो विजिगीषते. He that without having conquered himself wished to conquer his mindest, or that without having conquered his minister wished to conquer his foes, he failed helplessly. But he that conquered himself first as his own foe, and thereafter conquered his ministers and his foes, his work is not vain. धर्मस्य विपतनेके एके प्रोक्ता मनुष्यभिः स्वयं स्वं विज्ञानमाश्रिते दंसचेष्टा परायणाम्. दमा निश्चते प्राहुवर्धना निश्चते दर्शने ब्राह्मणरस्तते विशोधेक्षते दमो धर्म सनातना. अदानतः पुरुषो बलैषे संभिक्षत प्रतिपाद्यते अन्यत्र पश्चातः बहुनयायन् सपृच्छत जाया मदोषोपजान. आश्रमेषु चतुर्थो भुजते मेष वर्ततम्. अनाथता बहुना पश्चाताय भोजनाम आश्रते चतुर्भुवनावतं तस्य लिङ्गानि यदातिथि तस्मन्द्रज दक्षता ब्राह्मणि समस्तः सर्वजानाम्. इन्द्रियाधवत्यधीरमत्तां सुनामा वर्तते